Do I have a doozy for y'all? Exvangelicals, hashtag empty the pews, hashtag Christian alt facts, and me. Musings on my week-long experience with Exvangelicals and some advice for you. Greetings all, it is I, your favorite theological dinosaur. I was going to do a video on examining our beliefs and some techniques on how best to do it. However, instead, I went down the rabbit hole a little bit and did a lot of fighting on the Twitter sphere. But I wanted to write up some of my thoughts on it to maybe help people in case you were to ever stumble upon Exvangelicals. Be warned, much of this information comes from less than a week's experience with the movement, and it's not meant to be authoritative on the subject. Now, if you happen to be stumbling upon this and support the movement, please be aware that while I'm trying to be charitable towards the views, I also want to be honest to help someone maybe not make the same mistakes that I did. So feel free to listen to it and see if there's some ways that maybe you can help use this to change some things. There are always exceptions, and there's a chance that what I experienced may be merely an off week from what they were having. And I plan on doing another video this weekend with some advice to Exvangelicals about how to really go about affecting change and not alienating people who want to help. Anyway, last week I was on Twitter. I was poking around, following up on some conversations I had with friends, and I came across more than a few people discussing Exvangelicals, Ex-Evangelicals. One of my friends was using the hashtag empty the pews as a rallying cry against perceived injustices. Some of these have more validity than others. Whilst going through, I noticed there were two major trends within the posts and hashtag Christian alt facts. I responded to a couple of them, tweeted an observation, and then went about my evening. My observation was fairly simple, and if you want to see some specifics, you can check out all the gory details on my Twitter account at Saint St. Theosaurus Rex. The best way I was able to figure out how to explain the hashtag and the reaction that I faced and what happened to me in order to warn others, such as myself, is to imagine there's a big park in your town. You decide you want to go to the park and walk around. You see a bunch of people who are in a group, obviously. Some of them are crying, some of them are laughing, others are discussing things. You decide to start jogging around the park, and the people give you dirty looks. You then sit on a bench and strike up a conversation with someone. The person you strike up the conversation with engages and begins discussing with you. However, someone overhears your conversation and says, "Hey, there's a funeral here. Why are you being disrespectful to the people in mourning?" As you begin to explain that you didn't realize there was a funeral going on, they get a bullhorn and begin yelling at you. "I can't believe this person right here would be so disrespectful to people in mourning." Then other people come up and they begin condemning you. "Why would you even come here?" they ask. "What are you doing? Don't you understand this is a respect? You are being disrespectful. You need to be respectful." Then if you, as I did, admit that you now realize that people are in mourning, but you didn't know at the time, the new people will get the bullhorn and they'll start yelling at you. "And he knew that people were in mourning, and he did it anyway." I think you get the point, hopefully. But what do you mean, Rex? How do you have bullhorns on Twitter? That makes no sense. So here's how it played out for me. I mentioned that some of my friends were tweeting using a specific hashtag. I didn't quite understand where they were posting from, so I went ahead and clicked through. I went through the Exvangelical hashtag, they empty the pews a little bit, but mainly the Christian alt facts is what was interesting to me at first. I noticed four types of people or posts. The first is what I like to call nostalgic youth group posts. People who post about reading, quote, "I kissed dating goodbye," end quote. Or how Pokemans, and Harry Potter were both considered evil. These people are super lighthearted in these posts anyways, and interacting with them is pretty passive. Go ahead and do it. The second is the type of person who recounts a terrible injustice done to them. It could be as mild as, "I was made fun of in youth group because I liked rock music." Or as intense as, "My pastor raped me and no one did anything about it, and when I told people they said to hush." These people, rightfully so, are not there to argue about what happened to them. And while I think that sharing such personal details and things in a public venue under a hashtag designed to garner popularity is unwise, but interacting with them is usually passive. And, quite honestly, there's really nothing to argue about with it. That's what happened to them. So, what can we do? You apologize and move on from it. Now, the third type of person is the person who is taught terrible theology. They'll say stuff like, quote, I was taught that black people are demons. Or, I was taught that it was okay to beat women because they're subhuman. Interacting with them was less beneficial and kind of akin to doing the park things in the park. But it's hit or miss. As an example, someone posted about how they left the evangelical movement because women were seen as subhuman, as evidenced by the fact that Ephesians 5 instructs wives to submit to their husbands. I pointed out how in the Greek, the verb continues on to the husband and requires him to submit to his wife, and he must also love her as Christ loved the church. And so, in that sense, they were teaching wrong, and the people who were teaching didn't understand it. And I think that goes into a more important conversation with evangelicals: is at where do we call the line? Where do we draw the line? Because some people, that's a good way to put this. Some people's lack of formal training can hurt them from doing stuff, and can hurt other people who they're under because they don't know any better. They don't know what they're doing, really. Conversely, a lot of really, really famous pastors and really important people, like Charles Spurgeon, I believe it was, didn't have any kind of formal training. So there's that balance there. And sometimes you go into formal training and you learn all the right things to say and do, but you lose who you really are in the core. Anyway, the whole thing about terrible theology, that tends to be the majority of the kind of the things on the hashtag Christian alt facts. The fourth type of person or scenario is one where I can see where they're coming from, but oftentimes they have a more nefarious way of going about things. These are the people who may or may not have been part of the other three groups, but are now focused on getting people out of Christianity and are using the other three for these means. Like, if Christianity were the evil thing that they think it is, I can totally understand and rationalize their point of view, because I would try to get people out of something I thought was inherently destructive. Now, they would say that it isn't love if a Christian were to try to get someone out of a self-destructive lifestyle, like a homosexual lifestyle, or a drug addict lifestyle, or like a gang type, that type of stuff. Something that isn't inherently good for them, but it's something that they really want to do, or something that they believe it's a part of, or it's who they are, etc. But anyway, that's a side note. That's full of hypocrisy. But what can you do? The problem with this type of person or these posts and stuff like that is, with the majority of the hashtag, they will say all sorts of things and then fall back on using the third type of person or second type of person really as their shield. So they'll go in and say, oh, Christianity is full of evil people. If you're still a Christian, you must be evil. Well, I disagree with that. I don't think that's a positive thing. Oh, you don't like people who've been suffering and who have issues. It's that part that I would consider to be somewhat nefarious in nature. Although don't tell them that, because then they get really freaked out. I had one person that was like, what do you mean nefarious? How could you say that people trying to get other people out of a faith is nefarious? I'll explain what it is, and they're like, oh, that's not true. No, nobody is trying to get people out of the faith. Show me with a fact or a quote or something like that. Go back and forth. And then that very same person was like, oh, you know what? I think that it's beneficial, and it's the right thing to do to try to get people out of such a destructive and abusive faith. Screenshot that, bring it up to the thing. Well, could you show me a fact? Copy that. So what they do is they delete they delete my response or delete their part of the tweet. Somehow that part of the conversation gets deleted, and then they respond back to the and one that was not related to the one that I chopped. He said, "Did you just copy me to copy me?" And blah, 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 blah. And it was, if you look at it logically and look at the thing, you can see it was totally taken out of context. Anyway, here's an example of the fourth type of person. So that's kind of what I'm talking about. They might say something like, Christianity in and of itself was abusive and promotes abuse towards people. Here's a Bible verse proving it. And they might cite Proverbs 13:24. Now that verse, translated by Crossway in the ESV, says, quote, "Whoever spares the rod hates his son, but he who loves him is diligent to discipline him." End quote. I responded by asking if they believed that discipline in and of itself was wrong, and I didn't believe it was. They responded by saying that beating a child is wrong. I agreed and asked, but that's not what I asked. But that's not even really what the verse is about, because in the Hebrew poems, like this was, it's more about the second part. The first is an example to be juxtaposed against the second, not an example of what we should necessarily do. I then also took a spot from Dr. Robert Alter's commentary and translation of the book of Proverbs. And in it, he pointed out, now Dr. Robert Alter, if you don't know, is a non-Christian professor of Hebrew and ancient literature at the University of California, Berkeley. Very, very liberal college. Ridiculously liberal. And Dr. Alter explains that the first part of that verse is actually not translatable into English. Now, this person I responded this to didn't respond, but took the time to pretend that I never replied, and actually said as much on a Twitter thing where she was quoting me saying, "Oh, why don't you respond to my comments?" Now, the fourth person isn't interested in the truth. They don't care about things. They're the ones with the bullhorns. They take what you say out of context and then retweet the quote-unquote sick burns against you to kick up the hornet's nest. And then other people who don't necessarily are then be poisoned against you, and they assume the worst of you. These fourth type of people will hide behind the fact that some people use it as a support group and try to silence you whilst they go about their goal of pulling people away from the faith. Here are a few more things I learned that hopefully you can use to be prepared. The individuals who will argue the loudest are not intellectuals. The facts and logical arguments don't matter to them. They are more interested in scoring points, looking for a few gotcha moments. They will argue with you about things, but the facts really don't matter because their feelings take precedent. Also, your feelings don't matter because their feelings are more important. They have the moral high ground, and you are but a pleb. All in all, I would really caution getting involved in the hashtag, or at least be prepared to defend everything you say and have it taken out of context. They always tend to fall back on the prove it, show me the tweet. And if you try and use any sort of examples, they take things so literally. Like there's no kind of allegory, there's no word picture, anything like that. And they love dismissing the ideas or your arguments by saying, "Oh, not all evangelicals, eh?" There's also no sort of orthodoxy, clear beliefs, or identifying traits. Some are Christians who have a problem with something. Some are former Christians who have a neutral belief about Christianity. Some are former Christians who have negative beliefs about Christianity. Others are former Christians who are actively trying to get people away from Christianity, whilst others, I'm convinced, are only there to draw people away from Christianity. I think I'll post a video this weekend as well with advice to the Exvangelicals. I think a lot of them have good intentions, and many have legitimate grievances. And those of us who are Christians have a responsibility to listen to some of those grievances and find working ways around it. Like, if it's bad teaching in your church and people aren't standing up, well, we need to be aware that this bad teaching exists. And if we hear it, be able to equip people to stand up against it. And it may seem like I'm being harsh, but I want to be upfront about what I experienced and the types of people I experienced, that you can be prepared if you decide to jump in the fray. I don't want you blindsided because I painted a rosy picture in an effort to give people the benefit of the doubt. Anyway, I just wanted to post this in hopes that maybe one person will guard themselves and not make the same mistakes I made. Let me know what you think in the comment. Feel free to like, subscribe, blah, 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 blah. Engage with me on Twitter at @StSaintTheosaurusRex. Even people who are part of the movement are talking about, "Oh, well, I received 500 invites or notifications about this." It can get oppressive. I turned off my notifications on my phone, so if I miss it, feel free to reply back and be, "Hey, guy, you missed out. I tried to ask you a question or whatever. I don't know. Anyway, that's it. I hope you have a great day. And feel free to reach out to me. I'd love to hear your thoughts. If you had an experience with it, did you have the same type of experience as me? Did you have a better experience? Did you have a worse experience? Do you think I'm off? Well, I don't know. You let me know, and we'll talk about it. Thanks very much. Bye, guys.